All right, folks, so a couple of hours before they kicked me out of the State of the Union address, I had the chance to meet the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He threw a bit of a cocktail party before. I actually met Mia Shem that night, too, the young lady who was held hostage by Hamas. And I really like Mike Johnson a lot. I mean, I tell Anthony D'Esposito and Mike Lawler and all those guys all the time how much I like them. And Mike did a really good job yesterday coming to New York City with Anthony, with Mike Lawler, with Nicole Maliotakis. They made their way, like I did Monday, to Columbia University. So with that said, honored to have the Speaker of the House make his debut on Sid and Friends in the Morning, Mike Johnson. Mike, good morning, buddy. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Great to hear your voice, my friend.
You too, buddy. Thank you so much. And you were so gracious and so nice at the People's House when I saw you that night, the State of the Union. And again, I really do think you're doing a terrific job. But before I get to Columbia, what you did yesterday, quickly, President Trump had a big rally, literally, Mike, 2 blocks away from my studios at 6:30 this morning. He finds a way to do all that despite sitting in court all day, every day. But there's another big court proceeding involving Trump that's not here in New York, and that is about presidential immunity coming up at 10 o'clock this morning. Any thoughts on what may come out of that this morning?
Yeah, as you know, Sid, my background's in constitutional law. I used to litigate all these cases, and this one is really, really important because you're talking about whether or not the President of the United States has immunity from prosecution. Why is that so important? Because if you're the president and you're sitting in the Oval Office, you have to make world-shaping decisions every single day. You cannot be sitting there thinking about whether you're going to be sued in court or some rogue DA somewhere is going to try to bring you up on charges. It would hamper your ability to do your job. And it is the most important job in the world. I mean, the President of the United States is the leader of the free world. And as President Trump said so well this morning, if you take away that immunity, the president is reduced to merely a ceremonial kind of figure. We can't have that. It would be dangerous. And I hope the Supreme Court sees it the same way.
Now, you've got a very important job, too. Very important job. And again, I mean this, Mike, I think you've done a tremendous job under and a lot of stress. I mean, MTG, the rest of them giving you a hard time. You passed the bill. You got money for Ukraine, Taiwan, and for me, most importantly, for Israel, which will go to our Columbia conversation. But even that wasn't enough. A lot of folks inside your own house angry that the border didn't get money, all that, which could be a different bill, right? This is a foreign aid bill, but with all the criticism and all that's going on, you've never wavered. Did you ever even consider walking away from that job?
No way. Listen, I mean, the border obviously is the most important issue in America. We fight for it every single day, and we have since Joe Biden walked into the Oval Office and began to open it wide. I mean, he did that intentionally. We all know the terrible effects that have come from it. We passed our legislation. We passed H.R. 2, our famous bill to secure the border, over a year ago. It's sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk collecting dust. We passed resolutions. We impeached Mayorkas, who's the secretary over Homeland Security, who's engineered all this stuff. We've done everything we possibly can, and the president and the Democrat-run Senate just simply ignore it. And so we're going to keep fighting. I mean, we turn our attention immediately back to that. But in the midst of all that, while the president won't use his authority to close the border and won't pay heed to any of the laws we've passed, we have to make sure that our allies are protected. Israel, among the first, right? It's the most important ally that we have, the only stable democracy in the Middle East. We're keeping the terrorists and tyrants at bay over there because Israel is protected. And they're in an existential fight right now for their very existence. We can't abandon them. I won't do it. And then with Ukraine, if we don't get them these weapons that they need right now, then Vladimir Putin can prevail. He'll continue. He'll go through. He'll take Kiev, the major capital city there, and then he'll be on the border of NATO states, Poland, the Baltic states, which will cost us exponentially more and require us very likely to send troops over there. This is a no-brainer. We had to do it. And I'm not in any jeopardy of losing the job, and I will not walk away. It's the most important time. Newt Gingrich said in an op-ed over the weekend, that I have the most challenging speakership since the Civil War because of all the challenges and all the things we're facing. But we have to do that. We're going to get the job done and deliver to the American people.
You're the right guy. I know you saw that Hirsch Goldberg video yesterday, and again, very pro-Israel guy. Will get to Columbia on the campus there, protecting Jewish students, talking just moments ago about getting money to Israel to make sure they still exist. Watching that video, Mike, that 3 minutes of that poor 23-year-old kid who was forced to read a script basically from Hamas, I really had a very difficult time watching it. I'm sure you did too.
No, of course. I mean, look, Hamas is a vicious terrorist organization. What they did on October 7th is the greatest atrocity, since World War II. I mean, they just slaughtered innocent Israeli civilians just because of who they are. It's unspeakable. We can hardly say on the radio. I mean, the rape and murder of women and children. They put infants into ovens, Jewish babies into ovens, and cooked them alive. I mean, these are animals. And for these students on these campuses to be waving flags for Hamas and the Palestinians is unconscionable. I think half the group doesn't even know what the heck they're talking about. I certainly hope that's true. And the rest of them need to be tamped down. Look, at Columbia, I mean, the administrators have chosen to let the threats and the fear and the intimidation of the mob rule overtake the American principles of freedom of speech and the free exchange of ideas and the free exercise of religion. Those things have to be defended, and our Jewish students have to be protected, for goodness sakes.
Oh, you're right, and that's why I went out there on Monday with Anthony D'Esposito and Mike Lawler and Bruce Blakeman. You were there yesterday. Once again, D'Esposito, who I love, Lawler, who I love, and Nicole, and you did a terrific job. And I have to tell you, Mike, you talked about how the students, and these students, like you said, half of them are disenfranchised losers. I'm being honest. I know they're not getting love at home from mommy and daddy. I don't know what their issue is, okay? The others are probably paid by people like George Soros to instigate. But for me, it's less about them. For me, it's how is this happening, Mike, in my city? I live in New York City. I'm a Brooklyn-born Jewish male. We've got the largest, proudest Jewish population outside of Israel anywhere in the world. How is this possibly happening, Mike Johnson, in New York City?
Well, part of the problem is, to be very frank, a lot of America's leaders are not speaking out about this. Key political figures, certainly some elected officials in the state of New York and the city of New York, they're not calling this for what it is. It's absolute madness and mayhem, and chaos is not an American value. We met with Jewish students. We had a Passover meal with them before we went to that event yesterday. And these kids are so heroic, but they're all banded together and they're fearful to go to class. I mean, they're in fear of their physical safety. And so the administrators at Columbia, rather than handling this situation, they just decided a few days ago, just cancel classes. Well, we'll just do that. Then they came up with a hybrid model. And the message to Jewish students is, maybe you should stay home. Everybody else can come and do their thing. I mean, it's crazy. We cannot allow this to happen. And we need more people to speak out. While we were there, 2 hours before we began our press event yesterday, Hamas issued an endorsement statement of the protesters. Yeah. Hamas, the vicious terrorist organization. That tells you everything you need to know.
Well, you mentioned political leaders. We've got a guy here in New York, and I won't mention names. He's been doing this for about 40 years, Mike. I don't know what he does, but he keeps getting reelected, and he's Jewish. And look what he's done over the last couple of months from that hate Bill Bibi speech on the floor of the Senate. As far as I know, he has not been to Columbia University at all, looking to protect the Jewish students. And you mentioned the fact that he's got that H.R. 2 bill on his desk now for over a year in an effort to close the border. I really feel like right now, Chuck Schumer is basically public enemy number one, and he's Jewish.
Well, it's shameful. I mean, he can handle these issues one by one, and he should. I've called upon him to do it, and all of us should. I mean, we need every elected official, every leader in this country, every conscientious citizen to show solidarity with our Jewish students and with the Jewish people and with Israel. Israel is fighting for its very existence right now. This is not some political game. And these kids out there that are chanting, some of them chanting death to America, is not something that should be allowed. They've co-opted the First Amendment, and they're using those arguments to protect calls for genocide and to elevate the voices of anti-Semites. This is the stuff of the 1930s. I mean, it has to be stamped out. Sid, we found out yesterday, one of the estimates is you've got issues like this and protests like this on maybe as many as 200 college and university campuses right now.
Wow.
Somebody's got to speak out, and members of Congress and leaders in Congress have an obligation to do that, and that's why we came to New York yesterday.
Two more will let you run. I can't believe it's up to 200. I saw really disturbing videos, Mike, as you did, University of Texas, USC, along with all these New York schools. So I know that me and your cohorts are all great guys. Again, Anthony, Mike, everybody have been asking Shafik, the chancellor, the president of Columbia, to resign for days. She hasn't yet. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. I don't know. But it's not like when Gay stepped down at Harvard, all of a sudden they're okay over there. So is a Shafik resignation enough to fix things?
Well, it's a first start. I mean, the very first obligation of a college administrator is to keep their students safe and secure, and they're failing in that first obligation. If she can't do it, they need somebody in there quickly who can. But then there are other actions that need to follow as well. I mean, we've all been talking about, and we're looking at very closely, this new idea that we would revoke federal funding to these campuses. They shouldn't get a dime of taxpayer dollars if they can't respect the basic fundamental constitutional freedoms of their students and the people. We ought to revoke student visas. I mean, if you're a foreign student here on our land and you're a violent protester and you're harassing and intimidating and threatening Jewish students, you don't belong here. You don't have a right to be here, and we ought to intervene in those things. We passed statutes, of course, in the House legislation and sent it to the Senate. There would be statute. But again, you noted Chuck Schumer hasn't taken any of that up. We've got real action that is needed here. We've got to stamp out anti-Semitism on these campuses, and I think it's going to take an all-hands-on-deck approach to do it.
And even then, as we wrap up this great conversation, and again, thank you for doing this. You know I'm a huge fan of yours. Even then, thank you. Even then, I'm going to tell you, Mike, that there is a very pessimistic outlook from Jewish people like me, my friends, my cohorts, what's going on in Israel. They all say all this was an opportunity for the anti-Semites to take their masks off, even though they wear masks, by the way, ironically. But it's always been there, this idea that never again, never forget. Well, guess what? We did forget, and it is here again. And is it ever really going to go away, whether it's a campus in New York City or what's happened in Gaza and now the north of Israel? There is a real fear from Jewish people like me, Mike Johnson, that despite your tremendous efforts and the efforts of your guys and gals in the House, now this is not going to go well when it's all said and done.
Well, I'm hopeful that in the end we can bring some sanity to the equation. And look, we can't give way to threats and violence and a generation of students who don't feel safe in their own classrooms, where they live, where they worship. This is not who we are as Americans. I tried to tell that rowdy crowd yesterday. They may not recognize it right now, some of these kids who are being misled and indoctrinated, but that message has to resonate. No American of any color or creed should ever have to live under these kinds of threats. It's absurd. And we're going to stand for the truth and stand for what's good. And I pray and hope in the end it will prevail.
Mike Johnson, thank you so much, A, for coming here yesterday. B, your tremendous work as Speaker of the House. We need you at this time, and you're doing a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Good talk with you.
You too, man. There he is, the Speaker of the House. That's a terrific guy, very impressive man. Mike Johnson making his debut.